Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forward Motion. I'm Karen Allyn. This is not the Karen Allyn type of show you're thinking about. This is a sports show. Me, a sports show. This is really cool, though. This is something that you have never seen before. It's new, exciting, and different. There has been nothing like this before. It's called the Redskins Encyclopedia. Not the type of show that I would normally do, you're saying to yourself, right? Well, I love a local guy. Born and raised here. Well, okay, he wasn't born here like me, locally born, but he was raised here. And he's a Redskins fanatic. Michael Richman is his name. He joins me right now in the studio. It's called the Redskins Encyclopedia. We have a picture of it, don't we? And I have it in my hand anyway. But this thing is huge. It's over 400 pages. It's called the Redskins Encyclopedia. The man has spent, what, since 2000 on this thing? Right. Years and years compiling everything. I mean, everything about the Redskins. Would you say, Mike?
I can honestly say it's the most comprehensive journalistic account ever of the Redskins.
This is very I mean, you went to everybody who's alive, practically, and to talk about the dead as well. I think you even channeled the dead when you wrote this book. This is really impressive, and I am not a person who watches every Redskins game. Obviously, I'm a Redskins fan, and it's not obvious, but okay. I know there are many, many women out there who are better sports fans and more loyal than I am. But this is admirable. This is amazing. It's truly amazing. I'm impressed. And I've got sports fans at home who are going to like this even more than I do. But not to mention our local fanatic Washington Redskins fans here. And of course, you know, it's a global thing with the Redskins. You know, they're just known worldwide.
They are, yes. They do have an international following.
And they are going to love this book.
I know of a Redskins fan club in England.
Do you really?
Yes.
There's
I've been
nothing,
in contact with them.
Let's put it this way, Mike Richman. There's nothing you don't know about the Redskins. What I want to know, though, it's hard to cover all this in half an hour. Let's start with things people would not dream of knowing about the Redskins. I know one thing. You would never notice that it didn't start in Washington. It didn't start in Washington.
No.
The Redskins started in, like, Boston?
They started in Boston, yes.
In, like, the 1920s? And it wasn't called the Redskins.
They were in
Braves.
Boston. They were in Boston from 1932 to 1936, 5 seasons. The very first year of existence, they were called the Boston Braves.
Right, I saw that.
And then they changed to the Redskins before the 1933 season, and they've, of course, been the Redskins ever since.
Now, the reason they changed to the Redskins had to actually do with, and I read this, so you're going to be surprised, I actually read this in your book. You proud of me?
I'm very proud of you.
Usually I read the book cover to cover, Mike, and in this case I'll say I made an exception. Did not read it cover to cover. But I read about that. Tell us why they changed the name. No, tell us why they were called the Redskins. Truly.
Well, the owner of the Redskins at the time, George Preston Marshall, let me back up. The Redskins, the very first year of existence, played at Braves Field, the home of the National League Boston Braves baseball team. And after the 1932 season, the Braves management wanted to raise the rent on the Redskins. And the Redskins owner at the time, George Preston Marshall, said, no way, we're not going to play here anymore.
We're out of here.
I'm going to move the team across town. And he moved to Fenway Park, the home of the American League Boston Red Sox. So what Marshall decided to do is he wanted to suggest a connection with the Red Sox. So that's how we have red. And he wanted to maintain the Native American theme that he had with the Braves. So we end up with Redskins.
Yeah. So it's not such a racist thing. Over the years, lately, the last few years, there has been some controversy about that. Do you agree with that? What do you think about that, just by the way, since we're throwing that in? How do you feel about that?
When people ask me that, I go back to what the Redskins were originally like. There were, as I wrote in the book, there were 6 players from the Haskell Institute in Kansas, the Indian school in Kansas, who played for the Redskins in their early years. Also, Sammy Baugh was a part Native American. So the Redskins have had Native American blood on their team. I don't want to...
But it's not racist, right?
Marshall didn't intend it as a racist term at the time, no.
Okay. Just want to set the record straight. The reason I said 1920s, by the way, was because that's when the NFL was born, correct?
The NFL was born in 1920.
But not the Redskins.
No. What happened is Marshall owned a laundry business here in Washington called the Palace Laundry. It was at 9th and 8th Streets Northwest. And he was a very ambitious man, and he had sports interests. And so he decided to invest in a sports team. And he bought a basketball team in what was then the American Basketball League. The team played for 3 years here in D.C., did poorly. But through the league, Marshall met a couple of men who influenced him to buy the rights to an NFL franchise, one of whom was George Halas, who owned the legendary Chicago Bears owner. He also owned a team in the basketball league. Another man was Joe Carr, who was the commissioner of both the NFL and the basketball league. And they were looking for young, successful investors to buy NFL franchises in larger markets too. They had a lot of NFL teams in small markets, but those teams were struggling financially. They wanted to place them in larger markets. And so Marshall bought the rights to a defunct NFL franchise in Newark, New Jersey, and he placed it in Boston.
Wow. You are a walking encyclopedia to remember that. That's only the beginning. You could probably talk about what's at the end of your book, too. It's amazing. Okay, well, this book is 432 pages. What the heck were you thinking? Why write this?
I just wanted to tell the entire story of the Redskins. I don't think, I know, like I said, it has never been told in this comprehensive type nature in the past. I wanted to make it as original as possible, too. I interviewed people in
8 zillion of them.
Many ex-Redskins.
You just let them ramble on about their experiences?
Exactly.
That's not hard to do. They love talking about it, right?
Exactly, yes. Former athletes love reminiscing about their playing days. And you just, you let them talk about it.
And you're in heaven. You've got to be in heaven. It's great listening to those tales.
Exactly. The way I felt is, and particularly this was with the guys from the 70s and 80s, I felt like I was reliving my childhood. When they were talking about a certain play or sequence or some type of relationship that they had with another player or coach, I had flashbacks. I remember them. When Billy Kilmer, the Redskins quarterback in the 70s, is talking about throwing a 45-yard touchdown pass to Charlie Taylor in the 1972 NFC Championship game, I can picture that.
You remember it.
I know how Kilmer set up in the pocket. he threw a beautiful pass down the right.
Remember that.
He threw a beautiful pass down the right sideline to Taylor, who beat Cowboys cornerback Mark Washington, and I could just picture all of that.
I remember that. That's amazing. I can, like I said, I think I can. Oh, I'll pretend I didn't say that. Okay, so who amongst your interviews stands out as one of your favorites that you? I mean, who did you think about as a kid growing up watching this stuff that you really wanted to talk to and meet one day that you actually met and talked to and went, oh my God, I never thought I'd see the day?
Well, Billy Kilmer is one. Sonny Jurgensen.
Yeah. Still around, though.
Still around, still very popular in the area. He was a tremendous interview. It was mostly the guys from the 70s. I remember the 80s very well, too, but then I was starting college, and I was still passionate about the Redskins, but it was mostly the guys from the 70s. Dyron Talbert, I remember him vividly. He was a great Redskins defensive lineman in the 70s. A lot of those guys who came over with George Allen as part of the Over the Hill gang, that was my team. That was the team I grew up with.
I bet you wanted to interview George Allen.
I wish I would have had the chance. In fact, of all people, I didn't have the chance to interview. I mean, he's the one I really missed out on. He, of course, passed away in 90 or 91. And but I interviewed his son, former Senator George Allen, who was extremely helpful.
Really? Yeah, I bet.
Well, Senator Allen told me the story of how his father was such a fanatic when it came to winning and losing. It's like, it's true, the saying that when the Redskins lost, it was like Allen was experiencing death. That was really true for him.
A coach's life and death. God, you know. Did you ever want to be a football player? Would you ever see that as a possibility?
I did have thoughts
like
at one time.
Every boy that's a sports fanatic grows up wanting to, you know, be a player of some sort.
I did want to be a football player. When I was young, I used to imitate like the throwing motion of Jurgensen and Kilmer when we would have pickup games, and I actually played a little bit in high school. I played junior varsity football at Churchill High School in Montgomery County, but then my aspirations really didn't go that far.
Well, at some point you discover. You know, I thought I was Nadia Comaneci too. It's okay. At some point you're like, oh my God, I guess not. It's a rough letdown, isn't it? But you still got to be in it. You're a freelance journalist, right?
Exactly.
Sports journalist. And
I wrote a bound book in 6th grade called The Amateur Who Played Like a Pro. It was about a star football player at Ohio State. It was a fictional story, but at that time I had it in my mind that I wanted to write a book about football. So this was like a dream come true for me.
This is great. See, so you did it. You carried the ball all the way.
I did,
Touchdown.
Yes. I think it's just an example of how you can live your dreams, and if you have the determination to do it.
I'm liking that. That's what people need to hear and see. Dexter Manley wrote the foreword here.
He did, yes.
Why Dex? Why did you choose him? Why did he do it? Where is he? Why didn't you bring him?
He lives in Bethesda.
Okay, that's not too far.
No, it's not. He lives in Bethesda. I first came in contact with him in 2002 at the press box at FedEx Field. And shortly after, I interviewed him for a story. And I caught up with him about 2 years later, again, and interviewed him, did another article on him for the Redskins' internal publications. And we developed a nice rapport. And then when the time came, I eventually asked him if he would be willing to write the foreword. It was just, it
Nice rapport.
kind of fell into my lap.
You got to
really.
touch greatness over and over and over again. This is exactly what it's all about.
Exactly.
All right, I want to ask you about three guys. Tell me a little about each one. The amazing Vince Lombardi.
Yes. He was here in 1969. He coached the Redskins that one season. The Redskins finished 8-6 that year. It was their first winning season since 1955. So Lombardi injected like a winning flavor here in Washington. And many people felt the Redskins were on track to greatness.
Because of him.
Because of Lombardi. And the feeling was that he would do with the Redskins what he had done with the Green Bay Packers. He had taken the Packers to 5 NFL championships and 2 Super Bowl wins before retiring after the 67 season. Then he was a Packers executive in 68, and then Edward Bennett Williams, the famous D.C. attorney who was the Redskins president, lured him to D.C. here. Very nice compensation package, and he coached the Redskins that one year. But unfortunately, cancer did him in. He died just before the 1970 season, and it was a tremendous emotional letdown for the team. The Redskins finished 6-8 that year.
Rough.
It was on everybody's minds.
That was tough. John Riggins.
John Riggins came to Washington as
Still around.
Yes, he is still around.
Personality-wise, too.
Came to Washington in 1976 in what was then known as a free agent. He was handsomely compensated by the Redskins. George Allen lured him to D.C. And he had a couple of decent years with the Redskins, but he also had injuries. And it wasn't until Jack Pardee became the Redskins coach in 1978 that Riggins really had what you would call a breakout season here in Washington. He rushed for more than 1,000 yards in 1979. But after the 79 season, he was just fed up with the whole situation here. The Redskins just missed the playoffs in the 79 season, so Riggins sat out that year. And then when Joe Gibbs was hired as the Redskins coach in January of '81, the story goes, and as I told it in the book, he went to Kansas where Riggins lived on a farm, and he said, "We need you back. If you," according to Gibbs, he said to Riggins, according to Gibbs, Riggins said to the coach, he said, "If you get me back, I'll make you famous." That was how Joe Gibbs related. And of course, in 1982, the Redskins won the Super Bowl. They won Super Bowl 17. Riggins came back in the '81 season, and the following year, the Redskins won the Super Bowl.
Well, of course, he's also known for saying to Judge Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, "Loosen up, Sandy, baby."
Right.
Is that in here?
That is in there, yes.
Thumbs up to you, Mike Richman.
I could not avoid his
Of course.
eccentricities.
No. Well, and, that's part of who he is. Also, okay, let's talk about Theismann. Joe Theismann. That's a chapter. I don't even remember. I can't keep track of your chapters because you do have a lot of fascinating chapters here. Talk about Joe Theismann. There's a lot there.
Well, Joe Theismann, I would say, was probably the most important interview I had in the book because
Really?
he transcended 3 different coaching eras. He went from George Allen. Theismann came to Washington in 1974, so he was with Allen for a few seasons, and then he was with Jack Pardee for a few seasons from '78 to 1980, and then he was here for the beginning of the Joe Gibbs 1 era. So Theismann was extremely important in telling me that whole story. And what is so ironic is that in the early '80s, Gibbs' very first season, 1981, Theismann and Gibbs were not seeing eye to eye. And Theismann told me the story of how he went to Gibbs' house after the Redskins started 0-5 in 1981, and he said, "Listen, Coach, I'll push aside all of my outside business interests." At the time, Theismann being so flamboyant and popular in the area, he owned a restaurant and he did all this television work. He said, "Coach, I'll push it all aside if you want me to just focus on football. Football is, going to be my primary goal right now, and as fate would have it, the Redskins finished 8-11 that year. I'm sorry, they won 8 out of their last 11 games, finished 8-8 overall, and the following year they won the Super Bowl.
Because he pushed everything else aside.
Theismann basically got his act together. He and Gibbs started agreeing on things. Also, Gibbs went to a single back offense that year, and that helped considerably.
Is that the year of Kathy Lee Crosby?
Kathy Lee Crosby, I believe, was in Theismann's life around 84, 85.
Can't keep track. But I just remember reading so many intense articles on Joe Theismann. He was such an icon, and such he was out there. He was out there. And talk about the leg-shattering play, the leg-shattering, career-shattering play.
Right. Well, that was in a Monday night game in 1985.
If I remember that, I mean, what does that tell you? If I remember that, okay?
That's actually it says that play isn't it on everybody's minds.
Huge.
People remember it today.
Yeah.
They
Kathy Lee
can picture
Crosby
it.
and that play. And Joe Theismann's restaurant.
Remember the Theismann had T-shirts made up
Did he?
for Kathy Lee Crosby.
I mean, snap. I mean, I can remember Joe talking about, I think, hearing a snap or something during that play or something, reading about it or something. That's how much I remember of that career-ending.
Well, as Theismann told me, that pain was just so intense. You could basically see it on TV when it happened,
I remember.
And everybody just, was it was just a very, very tough play to watch. But that ended Theismann's career. It was in November of '85, and he never recovered from it. He had a tryout with the Redskins prior to the '86 season, but the Redskins, the Redskins coaches just said at the time to him, you're not going to make it. One of his legs was dragging, and
Poor thing. How hard must that be?
that was very difficult for him. But he already had TV interests lined up.
Yeah.
He was doing network broadcasting of the NFL games. He had already done the color work for one of the Super Bowls, I believe, maybe Super Bowl 20 or maybe 19, one of those Super Bowls he did the color work for. So he had so much practice here in D.C. too. He was doing work for Channel 7, Channel 4. He had his own show.
Yeah.
So
he was fine.
he knew how to market himself.
Basically, right. Yeah. Okay, over the years, I'm curious to know what you think, now that baseball has its steroid scandal, football's has its various, I mean, it's touched every sport basically, and Olympics, and what I want to know from you is how bad, I mean, how do you think it is for sports to be touched by this terrible pressure to be beyond the best that a human body can be? Why do they need to be so desperate to pump themselves up beyond the ridiculous, and then they get caught, then they lie? What's going on? Isn't it a little crazy to be? Why do they need to go this crazy? They already get $1 zillion salaries. I mean, and look at Dexter Manley, and look at all these people that have chosen the wrong routes and gotten in so much trouble, and addicts and drugs, and I mean, over the years, hasn't this gotten, just all this kind of stuff have gotten way out of hand?
I think particularly in baseball, it's gotten out of hand. Baseball, they did no testing at all during the 1990s. So I think that's why they're in big trouble right now. By comparison, football, the NFL has tested for the past 20 years. And some of those guys have been caught, and they are suspended for a certain number of games. So football has cracked down to an extent.
But the pressure's
the
so
pressure is
high.
very great for these guys.
I mean,
to be the best. To be the very best.
And the Olympics too. I mean, and it's amazing to me how the desperation to be the best and to push your body to be on its limit. What are we doing to these people? They're only human. Why isn't it okay to be human and just play a good game?
I just think it's
the stakes are so high.
It's just the pressure is so great for these guys to be the best, and they feel that they're getting an edge. They're getting a physical edge by taking these pills and taking the shots.
But I mean, behind all that, is it like the owners are pushing to sell tickets to make more money? I mean, where is all the fans want to see a good game? Where does it end? Where does it start and where does it end?
I think it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
I think it's the big money is there. The owners, everybody wants their team to win. So it's like the players are feeling it, and some of them feel that they're going to escape the fact that they're going to get away with cheating. But the leagues really need to crack down. And Major League Baseball has to do a much better job.
You know, if you're a sports diehard, which you are, and even if you're not, you know, down deep, cheating, you really haven't done it. And if you're a sports diehard, you really want to do it. You know, achieve the goal down deep within yourself. You really want to achieve it. It's not just about the money. If you're truly into sports, you really want to make the goal, not just pretend to make the goal, I would think.
I'll share an interesting story I heard the other night from Redskins great Pat Fisher. He played for the Redskins from 1968 to 77. And I was talking to him about this whole issue. And he said, you know, we just missed it. We missed the steroid era because I think those players started taking them in large numbers around the early 80s. But he said, you know, we just missed it. But if we had been part of that, we probably would have taken it too.
So sad.
It is. It was like, it's all part of the game, unfortunately.
It's sad that it comes to that. You just think that, you'd think that at least with the Olympics, there's something about good sportsmanship that's somehow, which I know it's gone by the wayside like everything else, but you'd think that people really want to earn that gold. And then when it's wrong, give it back, which I think we've seen on occasion. But
in no way do I want to imply that all professional athletes take
right, of course
pills.
not, of course not. But we would hope that, you know, anyway, being idealistic anyway. Okay, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the Redskins and the Cowboys.
Sure.
A whole chapter to that. What is with that? I didn't read that chapter because God knows you only have 432 pages to read. But yeah, what is up with that? And it always seems to me that the Cowboys are so strong, just always legendarily kind of, they are just so strong and hard to beat.
Well, let me start from the very beginning. The Redskins and Cowboys have been rivals since forever, even before the Cowboys stepped on the field. George Preston Marshall did not want to allow the Cowboys into the league. The Cowboys were trying to enter the NFL in 1960. He didn't want them in the league because the Redskins at the time were known as the team of the South. And they played exhibition games all throughout the South, the Southeast, and even as far west as Texas. So Marshall was thinking, hey, you know, these guys come into the league, they're going to be stealing part of our fan base. So he tried to block their entrance into the league. But the Cowboys owner at the time bought part of the rights to the song Hail to the Redskins. And he said to Marshall, either you vote to allow us into the league or you're not going to be able to play your song. So Marshall acquiesced, and that's how the Cowboys entered the league. But during the 1960s, the early years for the Cowboys, the Redskins and Cowboys had some great games, high-scoring games, very exciting. And the Cowboys had become a really good team at the time, around the mid-60s. But the Redskins kept pace with them. The Redskins had Sonny Jurgensen and quarterback and some great receivers, and Charlie Taylor, Bobby Mitchell, and Jerry Smith. And there's some very high-scoring games. The teams beat one another 34-31. I called them shootouts at the OK Corral. That's what it was like in the 60s. But it wasn't until George Allen came here in 1971 that the rivalry really took a step up. Allen intensified the rivalry because he literally hated the Cowboys. And he taught his players to think the same way. Like one time, Allen took karate lessons with June Rhee, and he came into a meeting and he chopped the board in half, or kicked the board, broke in half. And so he said to his players, listen, that's what I'm going to do to Dallas coach Tom Landry at midfield when I see him. But it was all a motivational play.
Great. Hey, it's great. Whatever coaches need to do.
It was a motivational play. It was saying to his guys, you know, get psyched to play the Cowboys.
Right.
But Allen, he just hated them.
How does Joe Gibbs deal with the Cowboys? And I'm just sort of segueing over to Joe Gibbs in general. What do you think of his coaching style? How's he been?
In terms of his
in general, just
games against the Cowboys? Or
no, Cowboys and in general.
Well, in the 80s when Gibbs was here, 80s and early 90s, he was nothing like Allen. Gibbs was always telling his players, you know, keep it down. Don't say anything that's going to inflame tensions against the Cowboys or any other team. So what happened is Dexter Manley took the torch. He was saying things that antagonized the Cowboys, and so but they had some great games in the 80s too when Gibbs was here. It just wasn't as loud as when George Allen was here in the 70s. And the teams are still big rivals today. They played some very, very exciting games in recent years. The Monday night game in 2005 when Santana Moss caught the 2 late touchdown passes to give the Redskins a 14-13 win. That had to be one of the greatest wins in Redskins history, regular season wins. And then last season when Nick Novak kicked the 47-yard field goal at the end of the game to beat the Cowboys, only seconds earlier a Cowboys field goal had been blocked. So it was just a
I'm
thrilling
nodding my
ending.
head like I remember that. I don't remember that, but I do remember your website. Let's give your website, redskinshistorian.com.
Correct.
Correct? All the information you need on the Redskins, on you, on the book, on that website, redskinshistorian.com. Right. We didn't really mention Jack Kent Cooke, which is not doing him justice, but it's impossible to mention everything in this book to do it justice. But if you had to pick 1 or 2 favorite coaches, for example, or important people in the life of the Redskins over the last 75 seasons of its life, who would they be?
Well, you'd have to. Jack Kent Cooke was so
Clearly.
Instrumental in the Redskins' glory years in the 80s and early 90s. And he was just, he was a terrific owner. He knew how to relate to his coaches and players and when to back off. And he knew when to pay them, or how to pay them too. Like, for instance, when Doug Williams came here as a backup quarterback in 1986, he was designated as a backup. Everybody knew it. Cooke paid him an exorbitant salary at the time for a number 2 quarterback, but Cooke knew when to pull out his wallet and compensate these guys. But he was a great businessman too, and he was a pioneer in sports. He promoted the first Ali Frazier fight, so he just had those instincts. He was, he had so many business interests, real estate, and.
We got to go. Who was the best quarterback for the Redskins ever?
Best ever?
Yeah, best quarterback.
I would have to go with Sonny Jurgensen for the best ever.
Yeah.
Can I say the best all-around player, though,
Yeah.
guy who's a very great passer, too, is Sammy Baugh.
Okay.
Arguably the greatest all-around player in NFL history.
Is who?
Sammy Baugh.
Okay, I haven't. Oh, God, I'm
the Redskins' first true superstar and the first great passer in the NFL.
Okay, gosh, we got to go. RedskinsHistorian.com. Michael Richman, forward.motion at Comcast.net is my email. I'm Karen Allyn. We'll see you next time. Oh, my God, we're in a rush. Got to go. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Got a lot to pack in.